Did you know we have completely ad-free early access to all of our episodes? Well, we do. Not only that, but we have dozens of bonus episodes waiting for you. Head on over to patreon.com/ghosttownpod, and you can check it out for 7 days absolutely free. That's patreon.com/ghosttownpod.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.
A Death Note. I'm Jason Horton.
I'm Rebecca Lieb.
And this is Ghost Town.
If you Google Chalino Sanchez, one clip comes up more than any other. It is May 15th, 1992, and Sanchez, one of the most influential Mexican singers of the late 20th century, is performing at the Salon Bugambilias in Culiacan, Mexico. He's in a suit and cowboy hat, front and center on a dimly lit stage. As the band warms up for his next song, Sanchez is handed a note from someone in the crowd. Reading the note, the handsome 31-year-old seems disoriented, wiping sweat from his brow. A consummate professional, however, Sanchez collects himself and continues on with the show. The clip isn't haunting in and of itself until you put it into its own grim context. Just 1 day later, the body of Chalino Sanchez would be found lying on an abandoned road, 2 gunshot wounds to his head. Today on Ghost Town, the story of the legendary and revolutionary entertainer Chalino Sanchez, and the note that would seal his undoing. The youngest of 8 children born into violence and poverty, Rosalino Sanchez Felix was born on August 30th, 1960, at a small ranch in Sinaloa, Mexico. Though he grew up around organized crime, Rosalino, nicknamed Chalino, had a deep sense of justice that was articulated early in his life. A want for more and better for himself and his family. This sentiment came to a head when in September 1975, Sanchez shot and killed a cartel higher-up who had sexually assaulted his sister. Just 15 years old, Sanchez then moved to Tijuana, where he worked as a coyote, smuggling undocumented immigrants into the United States. Soon it was Sanchez's turn, and in January 1983, he fled with his aunt to Inglewood, California. There, he worked multiple jobs, washing dishes, selling cars, whatever he could do to make ends meet. In May 1983, Sanchez met the woman who would become his wife, Maricela, and had 2 children with her, all the while working and raising his family and discovering his love of expressing himself through music. In July 1984, Sanchez's brother Armando was shot and killed in a hotel in Tijuana, which inspired Sanchez to compose his first corrido, or ballad, about the event. It was called Recordando a Armando Sanchez. Around this time, Sanchez was back in Tijuana and was arrested for petty crimes. In prison, he was hired to compose corridos for his fellow inmates, based on their own histories and crimes, turning their stories into song and recording them on cassettes. For his trouble, Sanchez was paid in cash, watches, and even guns. This is where Sanchez developed his contentious, but soon-to-be popular, signature style. Sanchez's voice had a raw, nasal tone, stripped down and to some sounding somewhat amateurish. According to a Medium piece about Sanchez by R.F. Wild, Sanchez didn't consider himself a traditional singer, saying that he would often bark the lyrics that he wrote. Says Wild, quote, This raw, unschooled vocal quality was a major part of Sanchez's appeal. It made him sound authentic and unspoiled by pop polish, convincing listeners that he genuinely lived the outlaw life of his lyrics. Juan Carlos Ramirez Pimenta, a professor of literature and cultural studies at San Diego State University, also says of Sanchez's vocals, quote, "He offered a democratization of the possibility of singing. One person said, 'If he sings, even I can sing.'" Out of prison, Sanchez became more popular. He was introduced to Angel Parra, who arranged for the singer to record his first demos in 1987. Sanchez recorded 15 songs with local community members, undocumented immigrants, petty criminals, and ranchos as his corrido subjects. It was revolutionary because, unlike mainstream music at the time, these protagonists were just like the listeners, whose realities were living paycheck to paycheck, existing in and among drug cartels, and generally just trying to survive. Unsurprisingly, Sanchez's cassettes became hugely popular, selling quickly out of the trunk of his car and at local flea markets. Sanchez also began performing at quinceañeras and baptisms. Though his recordings remained raw and unvarnished compared to mainstream Mexican folk music, fans were drawn to Sanchez's stripped-down singing and lyricism. His style would soon create a new type of music, the narco corrido, or drug ballad, a gritty subgenre of the rejected pop veneers of the time and embodying a sense of unapologetic realism, reflective of the escalating drug cartel activity in Mexico. Songs like Nieves de Enro and Alma Enamorada became anthems for the working-class Latino experience in such a challenging and uncertain context. According to LA Weekly, quote, "As a performer, Chalino had a distinctly American, democratic ethic. He dressed like his audience, a cocked cowboy hat, large belt buckle, cowboy boots, and usually gold chains and watches. He often tucked a gun in his belt. He broke, too, with the traditional Mexican entertainment style, where the singer was the star, the audience the adoring public, and everyone knew his place. He would pose for photographs with fans when he was singing." By 1989, Sanchez had become a musician that was by and for the people. He had given up his day jobs, formed his own record label, and was hustling his cassettes full-time. The previous year, he'd met Nacho Hernandez, whose band Los Amables de Norte became his regular accompanists. Now, the king of corrido, Chalino Sanchez had arrived, had record deals, tens of thousands of cassette sales, and a multitude of concert dates all in front of him. He was famous both in the U.S. and in Mexico, performing steadily in both countries in the early 1990s. On January 25, 1992, Sanchez performed at the Plaza Los Arcos restaurant and nightclub in Coachella, California. An attendee named Eduardo Galejos, an unemployed mechanic under the influence of heroin and alcohol, requested Sanchez play the song El Gallo de Sinaloa. After his request, Galejos jumped on stage and fired 4 shots at Sanchez. In retaliation, Sanchez fired his own gun that he carried on him, but the gun jammed, and then he threw it at Galejos. Says an LA Times piece about the incident, quote, "After clambering drunkenly onto the stage of a nightclub, Galejos stood face-to-face with the singer Chalino Sanchez. Both men had traveled similar paths. Like Chalino, Galejos was a teenager when he left his home state of Sinaloa, Mexico, where his family worked the fields in poverty. Galejos was looking for the American dream, to earn money, he would say decades later. It didn't turn out that way. Galejos' 4 shots hit Sanchez twice in the chest near his armpit, striking his lung. One bullet hit Sanchez's accordionist in the thigh. Sanchez's shots missed Galejos entirely, but hit and killed 20-year-old Claudio Rene Carranza, who was dancing to the music with his wife. In total, 9 to 15 shots were fired in that nightclub, and tragically, 10 people were hit. Galejos was eventually wrestled to the floor by a bystander and was shot in the mouth with his own pistol. As it turns out, Galejos and Sanchez's stories continued to be similar. Both were in critical condition, both were transported to the Desert Regional Hospital in Palm Springs, California, and both survived their wounds. Eventually, Galejos was convicted of attempted murder and was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. He was paroled in 2023. Sanchez eventually healed from his wounds, and the additional press only increased his mythology, his sales, and his radio airplay. In 1992, Chalino Sanchez returned to his old stomping grounds of Culiacan. In 1992, Chalino Sanchez returned to his old stomping grounds in Mexico to perform. The stories collected by experts say that many people recommended he not travel to that part of Mexico due to the violence and the hold of the drug cartels and, of course, Sanchez's own fame. But Sanchez had come so far. Heading back gave him a sense of perspective and a sense of purpose to continue to share his music with those who grew up like him. But the trip and the concert in his hometown venue would be his last. More after this break.
How many photos are on your camera roll right now? Enough to stress you out? Same. Here's what finally worked for me. Chatbooks.
And they've got a podcast-exclusive deal that's honestly wild. 12 monthly mini photo books for just $12, plus free shipping.
That's a full year of printed memories for less than a month of streaming. Go to chatbooks.com/get12. That's chatbooks.com/get12 and grab it before it's gone.
After the January 1992 shooting and the increase in his own notoriety that followed, Chalino Sanchez became a bit paranoid, maybe even fearing for his life. He distributed his gun collection to his friends and sold the rights to his song to Musart Records, receiving enough money that he gave to his wife to buy their family a house in her name. Still, he was set on performing, and in the spring of 1992, he went back to Culiacan, his childhood home, for a series of gigs. On May 16, 1992, during a performance at the Salon Bugambilias in Culiacan, Mexico, Sanchez was doing his thing, readying himself for his next song. As the musicians played the introductory bars of the song Soul in Love, Sanchez was mysteriously handed a note from someone in the crowd. This moment is captured on video, and I suggest you watch it. It is unique, unnerving, and honestly very brief. You might not even notice it being strange if you watched the show in its entirety. But now, this moment, in its own importance, is frozen in time. Sanchez reads the note to himself in the video. He pauses, takes in whatever information is on the paper, and, seemingly worried, wipes his brow. Then he crumples up the note and continues on with the show, singing a ballad about love and death, called, of course, Soul in Love. The video captures just a couple seconds of vulnerability, a fear that immediately dissolves as Sanchez grounds himself back into his performance and continues on with the show. Personally, it's kind of haunting, but only if you know what comes next. After midnight, Sanchez left the club with two of his brothers, a cousin, and a couple of friends in a Ford. As they drove away, their vehicle was pulled over by a group of armed men in black Chevrolet Suburbans, said that they were the state police, and showed Sanchez and his entourage some kind of identification, telling him that their commander wanted to see him. Sanchez agrees and gets into one of their cars. On May 16, 1992, the very next morning, two farmers were working at an irrigation canal by Mexican Federal Highway 15 in a nearby neighborhood. There, they found the body of Chalino Sanchez, blindfolded, with burn marks from rope on his wrists, and shot twice in the back of the head. When the news hit, Sanchez's popularity soared again, with hundreds of songs dedicated to the musician. While I couldn't find much on the investigation itself, when the news hit, Sanchez's popularity soared, with hundreds of songs, other people's corridos, dedicated to the slain musician. While I couldn't find much on the investigation itself, many have their own theories, which we'll discuss in a bit, calling the mysterious note given to Sanchez a, quote, death note, a note spelling out his demise that would come to fruition that very night. The note, unfortunately, was never found, but presumably Sanchez stared death in the face that night, determined to keep singing no matter what the cost. Sanchez was buried in the Panteón de los Vasitos in Sinaloa, Mexico, and his music continues to be played and appreciated all over the world. With, as a note, an unlikely fan of Sanchez is Snoop Dogg. He has murals depicting him and celebrating his impact, including a very famous one in Paramount, California. In 2021, Harvard journalists looked into the assassinations by the Mexican government around the time of Sanchez's death, concluding that the government had consistently covered up the mysterious and accidental murders of these three controversial politicians. I don't want to get into that. That could be a story in and of itself. but it is important and timely. These requests inspired a relook at Sanchez's death and queries on documents around his investigation to be made public, but they were denied. So who killed Chalino Sanchez? Some theorize that the Mexican government were in bed with the local cartels and were not happy with Sanchez's musical transparency about cartels and the criminal life as a whole. Some people think that way back when, Sanchez pissed off the wrong people in retaliation for his sister's sexual assault. There were, in fact, many times during his short life that Sanchez spoke up against the cartel or advocated against its hold on his community that could have ignited violence, and of course, the death note spelling out his own murder. But Chalino Sanchez, of course, lives on. His legacy extends all over Mexico and the U.S., like I said, and he sold over 200 million records, making him one of the most influential Mexican artists of all time, likely, in some part, bolstered by his mysterious death. In his podcast, The Ballad of Chalino Sanchez, podcaster Alejandro Mendoza aptly summarizes the tragic moment of the musician's death. Quote, "Whoever wanted Chalino dead screwed up, because it made him eternal."
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.